All right, today we are digging into a really fascinating study that looks at the role of spirituality in addiction recovery. It pits two very different treatment methods against each other to see if things like community and faith can actually make a measurable difference in one of the toughest fights anyone can face.
So, to really get what's going on here, we first have to wrap our heads around the sheer scale of the problem these researchers were looking at. Because this isn't just about one person's struggle, it is a massive, worldwide issue.
Okay, just look at this number for a second. 80%. According to the research, that's the relapse rate for people who withdraw from addiction within just the first 6 months. I mean, that is a staggering challenge for any treatment program, and it shows you just how tough long-term recovery really is.
And get this, the study doesn't pull any punches. It frames substance abuse as the fourth major global crisis. Think about that. It's ranked right up there with nuclear threats and environmental pollution. That perspective really tells you why finding effective, lasting treatments is so incredibly important.
So, with that huge relapse rate as the backdrop, this study zooms in on two totally different ways to help. They wanted to compare a standard medical therapy with a community-based one to see what we could learn from the results. On one hand, you've got methadone therapy. This is the medical route, right? It's patient-focused, using medication to control the physical and psychological side of things and prevent relapse. But then on the other hand, you have Narcotics Anonymous, and that's a whole different ballgame. It's all about community, peer support, and that famous 12-step program to really change your entire lifestyle. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. The researchers wanted to know if one of these paths had a bigger effect on a person's inner life. But how do you even measure something as personal as spiritual health? Well, they came up with 3 specific metrics to try and do just that. So here's how they set it up. It was a head-to-head comparison. They took 184 people in Iran and split them right down the middle. One group got the methadone treatment, the other group actively participated in Narcotics Anonymous meetings. It's a really clean, direct way to compare the outcomes. Okay, so the first tool in their toolbox is this concept called spiritual intelligence, or SQ. You can think of it just like IQ for smarts or EQ for emotions, but this one's for your spiritual side. The study defines it as your ability to act with compassion and keep your peace inside and out, no matter what life throws at you.
Next up, they measured something called spiritual well-being, and they split this one in 2. First, there's religious well-being, which is pretty straightforward. It's about a person's connection to a higher power. And then there's existential well-being, which is more about your sense of purpose. Are you satisfied with your life? Does it feel meaningful?
And the last piece of the puzzle was religious beliefs. This wasn't just a simple checkbox. They looked at the practical stuff. Are you going to services? Are you praying on your own? And what's your deep, internal, personal level of commitment to your faith? The whole shebang.
Okay, so they have the 2 groups, they have the measurements. So what happened? Well, once the researchers crunched all the numbers from the questionnaires, a very, very clear pattern started to emerge.
Whoa. Okay, just look at this table. It's straight from the study, and the results are pretty striking. On every single thing they measured, spiritual intelligence, spiritual well-being, and religious beliefs, the Narcotics Anonymous group scored significantly higher than the methadone group. And this chart just makes that difference pop. You can see it right there. When it comes to spiritual intelligence, the average score for the NA group is way up there at over 104, while the methadone group is back around 96. That is a clear, statistically significant gap. And here we go again with spiritual well-being. It's the exact same pattern. The community-based NA group shows a substantially higher average score. This just reinforces the finding that something about this approach is really boosting these specific aspects of a person's inner life. Okay, so this is the million-dollar question, right? Why? What is it about the Narcotics Anonymous program that could explain these results? Well, the study offers a pretty compelling answer, and it all centers on human connection. The study points out that the NA program is built on 3 pillars that all work together. Yeah, you've got the self-help programs, but it's also deeply integrated with social support from peers and a real explicit focus on spiritual strengthening. The researchers suggest this is the core of it. I mean, this quote from the paper says it all. Interacting with other people is effective in promoting spiritual health. That constant social interaction and mutual support is just baked into the NAN model. And this creates a huge contrast with the methadone approach. The study points out that methadone treatment is mainly about the individual and the medication. Since there's no required social interaction as part of the therapy itself, those social and spiritual dimensions just aren't being actively developed.
So let's zoom out. What's the big picture conclusion we can pull from this research? What does this all mean for addiction treatment more broadly?
Well, here's the bottom line. The study concludes that this spiritual dimension is a really powerful part of recovery. And it seems to be driven by the power of community, that social support and the shared experience that you find in the NA model. The findings suggest that spirituality helps build up a person's resilience, and that maybe, just maybe, all kinds of treatment programs could be more effective if they found a way to incorporate these support systems.
Ultimately, this research leaves us with a really provocative thought. It kind of forces us to ask, for long-term recovery, is the power of community just as important as the power of medicine? Perhaps the most effective treatments are the ones that don't just heal the body, but also heal the spirit and our connection to other people.